Peace be with you. We need to talk about addiction again because this is the nearest problem to us in the West. Muslims out here in the West also have problems with addiction, and it is destroying their families, their communities, and that needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed as soon as possible. And I'm going to explain what addiction is from a medical standpoint, but first I'm going to deliver the warning from God. If you say you have faith in God, then you should believe when God tells you to do something. You have faith in your parents sometimes when they tell you to do something, and once you get older, you realize how much pain and suffering just listening to that saved you. And every addict wishes that they listened to somebody's advice about drugs because somebody, someplace, has warned them before they took that first try. In the 5th chapter of the Quran, verses 90 through 92, God tells us, "O you who believe, intoxicants and gambling, or hamr, and gambling, and altar set up, and dividing by arrows, which is essentially raffling, are filth, devil's work. Avoid them that you may be successful. And surely the devil is trying to introduce hatred and animosity among you by means of intoxicants and gambling, and to keep you away from prayer, and to cause you to forget about God. Will you not then stop?" So this is your advice from God. And then these verses end with, "And obey God and obey the messenger." Like, listen to this advice. But be careful. If you turn away, if you don't listen to this advice, then on our messenger's duty was only to clearly deliver. So somebody's duty was only to warn you. And that is why people like me, people who didn't listen themselves at one point and who have tasted the consequences and watched the consequences of that particular choice, addiction, drugs in essence, I'm out here trying to warn young Muslims that this is, I don't care how lonely you are, I don't care how good of a friend they seem to be, I don't care how much you trust them, God, Allah Himself, warned you not to try that. And when you do try that, a natural mechanism kicks in. It's the same mechanism that allows us to have a favorite food, a favorite hobby, a favorite video game, right? It's the feeling, and that is the addiction. Don't confuse addiction with dependence. Dependence is when you get withdrawals. Your body is chemically dependent on something. That comes later. But dependence is also much easier to treat than addiction. I can bring anybody down medically as gently as I want to, so they have minimal withdrawals, or as fast as I want to, so they have just get off the drug real fast. Look, if you are a Muslim that has never tried a drug, if you see yourself as a Muslim, your job is never to try it. And if you are a young Muslim and you're lonely, your job is never to try it, even if that will bring you friends. It's not the kind of friendship you want, because you're going to end up a lot lonelier than you are at this time. Google Kensington Avenue, Philadelphia, for example, and see where addiction leads to. None of those people, when they were in your position, when they were like, life sucks, I'm going to consider drugs, they never thought it was going to get worse. Right? They thought that life is as bad as it could get. And Google Kensington Avenue, Philadelphia, Skid Row, LA, most of those are drug cases, people who are addicted to drugs. That's what happens. You try something, and if you like it, you start to crave it. Sometimes it's just better not to know the feeling. Because if you have no discipline, some people are disciplined enough to control that. And God, if you are a Muslim, you are disciplined enough to keep up 5 daily prayers, or however many prayers you think you're supposed to keep up. There, I won't even define it for you. Let your local imam define it for you. And have the discipline to do that. God demands that discipline. It is unacceptable otherwise. And for every one of those prayers, you have to be sober. So now you figure it out. If you never tried drugs, you don't want to. Trust me, it's a trap. It's slavery, and you should just better listen to God and have faith. But if you have tried drugs, then look, you can't get discouraged because you relapse. It's part of the process, I suppose, as long as you're getting better, and as long as these things are hiccups and limited in time and scope. You still have to pray, even if you relapsed. Now, how you relapse around that, go, figure it out. But be at risk of death. every time you use any of these drugs, especially opioids if you relapse. If you are a Muslim that's been addicted to opioids, there's a medication, Vivitrol, that you can get a shot every month, and it will help. Like you can't feel the effects of the drug, and it will help you quit. It will help you keep you from relapsing, for example. And it's not just drugs. God mentions gambling. Gambling is an addiction as well because it provides the same feeling. It is the feeling that you crave. The worst thing that can happen to you when you go try gambling is that you win the first time. It gives you that rush and you think it's always that easy, and before you know it, you're in a trap and your life revolves around it. Your finances are destroyed. It's one of the most expensive addictions. Alcohol is also an addiction. It's not just drugs. Pornography is also an addiction. It's with the eyes too. It's not just with the chemicals. It's the eyes, the ears that get addicted to things. God tells us in the Quran that intoxicants and gambling are from the devil, are filthy from the devil, to avoid them if we want to be successful. You never know if it's going to be you or not. Some people have gotten lucky and got made recovery and rescued somewhat of a quality of life for themselves by getting into recovery quickly enough. But others have been completely destroyed by drugs, and nobody, not one of them, before they tried drugs, thought that they were going to be an addict. And that's something that I desperately tried to tell people, because you think that you are more capable, more disciplined than some people, where I have watched extremely disciplined people struggle and fall to addiction. And I know that these were the people of abilities that are like prodigies. I've watched essentially a person I considered a prodigy, excellent in sports and excellent, intellectually, have a rough road once medications. In this case, there were medications, but just drugs. They were drugs were introduced into the system. So drugs destroy people, and can destroy them completely. And you never know if it's going to happen to you. So if you are an addict, there are ways. If you are a Muslim addict, your first way is to pray. Be sober for prayer. That's it. That's the goal. That is your number one goal right now. Be sober for prayer. Whatever you can squeeze in between, that's your problem. But be sober for prayer. That is your salvation. That is the road for salvation. That's it.